Jane is the founder of the Poets for Science movement initiative that started in 2017. We worked very closely with Jane, bringing poems to the National Mall for the original March for Science on the National Mall, and brought 23 7-foot banners of poems curated by Jane about science. So we're thrilled that Jane remains a driving force of this movement, Poets for Science. And we're going to be having the first ever national conference, a Poets for Science conference, 1 year from now in Kent, Ohio, at Kent State University the second weekend in November. So we'll have more information about that. Jane, I'm going to give very brief intros. The longer bios can be read on the Poets House website, but Jane is a former chancellor of the Academy of American Poets, a beloved contemporary American poet, and her most recent book is The Asking, New and Selected Poems, published by Knopf. Following Jane will be Leah Umansky, who has run the couplet reading series in New York City since 2011, and her newest collection is Of Tyrant, just out with The Word Works. Following Leah will be Joanna Solfrian, who was chosen by Naomi Shihab Nye to win the Stan and Tom Wick Poetry Prize for her book Visible Heavens. And her most recent book is Temporary Beast, published by Beltway Editions. Following Joanna online will be Ching-In Chen, who won the 2018 Lambda Literary Award for transgender poetry, and their newest collection, Shiny City, literally just a few days out, has been released by Airly Press. Following Ching-In will be Philip Metris online, whose newest collection of poems is Fugitive Refuge, published by Copper Canyon. And Phil is the professor of English and director of the Peace, Justice, and Human Rights program at John Carroll University. And then ending the first half of our reading this evening will be Arthur Sze, who is the 25th and the first Asian American United States Poet Laureate. And his newest book is Into the Hush, published by Copper Canyon Press. So please join me in welcoming Jane Hirshfield.
So much, David. Thank you, everyone who is here. It is a tremendous happiness for me and for Poets for Science as a community to be joining the nature of our time's editors and Poets House and the Poetry Coalition for an evening reading poems that speak for. Poems that speak for in this particular time, beings, plants, places, landscapes, and that speak also for the alliance of the metaphor and the microscope, for every way in which the increase of our knowledge, our observation, our respect, and our intimacy with all beings and their relationship to the actual can go forward. Because, you know, it is only recognizing that any part of existence goes forward well only when the whole of existence, when every part goes forward. So with that preface, I will read my own poem from the anthology and then a couple others. Many of these poems are poems of particular places and what lives in them implausibly and gloriously. This particular poem is about mosses that grow in the Mojave Desert. We don't think of mosses as being desert plants, and yet it turns out they are. And the epigraph to this poem comes from a piece that ran in the New York Times early the first summer of the pandemic in 2020. And it says, in the Mojave Desert, a translucent crystal offers bryophytes much needed respite from the heat of the sun. Mosses. For hypolithic mosses, it seems 4% of daylight is right. They live, the headline says, by sheltering under a parasol of translucent quartz. The crystal scatters the light's ultraviolet, dilutes its heat, traps the night's condensed moisture to moss-sized rain. I think of these mosses and consider, perhaps we too are mosses, evolving to the parch of our self-made mojaves, unable to bear the full brightness, the full seeing, to recognize fully the Amazon burning, the Arctic burning, the monarch's smoke-colored missing migration, an experiment not meant to last. And yet, we found shelter within it. We pondered our lives and the lives of others. Distance, for better, for worse, we offered our 4% portion of praises. For better, for worse, our 4% portion of comprehension. The next poem I'd like to read you is newer than even the new and selected poems because we keep going. I wanted to give you a poem local to this place, but it also travels a fair bit. I wrote it after the great poet and visual artist Atel Adnan died, almost 100 years old. She used to live in my county, and Mount Tamalpais, which is behind my shoulder, became for her, even after she left this area and ended her life in Paris, becoming increasingly famous as a painter. The outline of this local mountain continued to be in her paintings right through to the end. She was known when she lived here, not at all as a painter. We all knew that she made art, but she was at that time the most famous Arabic-speaking writer living in America. And that comes up in this poem, as does the first summer of what has continued the burning of the Canadian forests so far north that we never thought they would catch fire. The title is a quote from one of her letters to somebody, which I read after she died. And what she said was, "And if you like numbers, I will tell you that here on Earth, I wake thinking about a woman with whom I once shared a mountain. If you, as she did, like numbers, I can tell you that here on Earth this day, it is 55 degrees, a June 9th uncommonly cold. I can tell you that for company now, this day, you have roughly 8 billion living kin. I can tell you that since sapiens beginning, 117 billion have breathed in, out, and in again then, at least once. That worldwide, this day, 1 person in 7 is hungry. That 32 countries are listed as zones in conflict. That Beirut, where the woman was born, is called past the brink. If you like numbers, I can tell you that a single great blue heron flew earlier by a 10-windowed alcove, that in Canada, 10.6 million acres burned today, still unchecked, though this morning the smoke has moved elsewhere, its parts per million returning their color to 2 big wings folded up in a tree. I can tell you, conceived yesterday, something like 385,000 babies, and that tomorrow, 158,000, all ages, will probably die. There is also this to consider about numbers. The way that the more a life's counted, the less that life seems to count. I can tell you that 1 person born in Beirut, dead in Paris, for a time shared with me a mountain in California she never forgot. I can tell you its colors inside her paintings still astonish. Mountain, 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 kept saying, her brush. And I will close with a short poem, again, very local to me. If you could see to my left, you would see some redwood trees, the original inhabitants in the plant world in this place where I live on the hem of Mount Tamalpais. And all the redwood trees were logged off the mountain after the 1906 San Francisco earthquake and fire to rebuild the city. But redwoods are resilient. And this is an evening, I think, partly at least, not only grieving, not only calling for activism, but also celebrating resilience. And so redwood trees come back. A circle of young ones comes back from around the mother tree once it has been cut. And I have always felt someday this redwood, which is very close to my house, if it continues to become the size that redwoods do, there's going to be a bit of a conflict. And I have always felt the redwood tree should win. It was here first. So I will close with this short poem. Tree. It is foolish to let a young redwood grow next to a house. Even in this one lifetime, you will have to choose. That great calm being, this clutter of soup pots and books. Already the first branch tips brush at the window. Softly, calmly, immensity taps at your life. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. What a treat to read after Jane. Okay. I want to say thank you to Poets House. Thank you to David, Luisa, and Aileen, who have been so kind and generous. Both my poems I'm going to read are Ars Poeticas. Ars Poeticas, I like to say, are poems about poetry, about the creative life, about the writing process, about anything related to that nature. This one is from the anthology. Ars Poetica, Great Blue Heron. Today, I force myself out of school on a free period and walk into Central Park. There's a neon sign, protect your security, and I shake my head. It is the day after Election Day. I am sick with worry and fear. Again, the eye of the tyrant calls, even here, in this light, this calm. My security, I think. I think about questions. Who carries this on after us? What if there is no one? I don't know, but I know November is a time of remembering. That feels right. I know the world is made up of stories, of poems, and I see a tweet. What would happen if we stopped writing? I don't know. I'd like to say chaos, mischief, or despair, but honestly, probably none of that would happen. There are ways to do everything. They would be written in our heads and hearts. Then, last month, in a hike around Cranberry Lake, before the terror took hold again, in a moment of pure forest bathing, I looked at the colored leaves on the path. That is poetry. The dried up old pond, its pockets and cracks. That is poetry. I turned my eyes up to the near white of the sky, then down to the crunch of our steps. That is poetry. And then, just as we were about to turn away and walk back to the trailhead, suddenly out came the great blue heron, its wingspan wide as a tapestry, the sound of him like the whipping of wind. It was both wonderful and full of wonder. And there he was, suddenly out from under the eye and the mud and the desolate gray of the day, out, over and across the pond, a vertical line, a mirror to the sky. We gasped there. That is poetry. That camouflage, that song, that notion of what is there, what is not there, and what is there that you don't always see. Living, breathing, thriving. Thank you. Thank you. And this is a new poem, Ars Poetica, Am I Really Mary Oliver? Who knows? 1, there are roses on the subway track, a stimulus and response project. 2, how to undrown the self, feel, look, see, gather. 3, in a Zoom reading I'm part of, a woman pulls over on the road just to read her poem. Attention is joy. 4, at 59th Street, the doors open on the subway. The conductor comes on. Pay attention. Put your phone down. Everyone laughs. I listen. 5, when I walk to the station in the morning, I walk through marigolds and the ghost sunflowers, deadheads, really, and I think, I want to ask better questions of the world. You, in your radiant suggestion, what do you want? Thank you.
That was great. I was taking notes and I didn't get to finish. I met an editor once who said, "Stop sending poems about herons." And yours and Jane's both had herons. And I would argue that we need poems about herons. I'll read 2 poems, one from the anthology and one from my latest book. The first one from this book is basically a ghazal, which, if you don't know, is a form that, for the most part, well, it does lots of things, but mostly what it does is it has fairly unconnected couplets, but with a refrain at the end that you'll hear. Reading Psalm 104. My God is different from my childhood God, who was fathomless and feared. Each night, dear God, I'd walk past the lilies up the path to the white church, the wrought key in my pocket, my father's, another God. Yes, the wind carries messages, the earth trembles at a glance, but the Father Conductor is a myth written by men, not God. Some TV fool says love between men is an abomination. The anger that darkens my blood comes from God. After the friend dies, her body will give life to grubs, then to birds, who will provide the grieving song. The circle is God. Oops, Joanna, you just gave in to summation. Remember, you are no authority on God. Thank you. And the one from the anthology is called The Thrush. I don't know if any of you know the call of the wood thrush. You can usually hear it in late summer in the woods. It's magical. So this is called The Thrush. High in the pines, the flute of the thrush, water without splash, 3 clear notes, then a trill of bubbles. The sound exists in a tear above my knowing. A bead of sweat joins another, and then a stream slides down my breasts. I step. Where is its pot belly, its mottled breast? The humid odors of fern and decay ascend to its being. I walk to the next bend, and the notes fall again, sluicing through sunlight, invisible drops on the pine needle floor. Have I a place where, when it's all over, I want to be? Invisible. It is all invisible. Thank you.
I'm just sending a lot of gratitude to the editors and to Poet House and for all of you for being here. I'm going to read 2 poems, one that's in the anthology and one that's on the Nature of Our Times gallery. And both of them are written for a place called the Misery Point Preserve, which is near where I live. in Washington State, and they were writing the land projects. So where a poet was paired with a land trust project, and the goal was to write and spread the word about that particular land, and also to help raise awareness and money for that for the land. For the fir tree hanging by thin desire, written for the Misery Point Preserve in Seabuck, Washington. I admire your vertical ambition. You shift and settle with wind despite falling over bluff's edge. You determined to grow up decades, straining towards cloud. I dream of you reaching in all directions, making place in this place that is like an arm, listening for north storms, tracking unusual impulses through crumbled dirt, watching for fallen objects making their way to shore. Did you wait for your own shape to adjust? Ask ocean to introduce you to cousin eelgrass. Sing blessings to the foraged fish. I've come to say hello today again, despite daily struggles to keep balance. I learn again from you how to reorient back to breath, how to dream into our own roots. Dear eelgrass, you your own wild, bright green sea, your own spindly heart, switchboard of exchange and release. To sediment our fringe sanctuary, to hold our own habitat steady. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ching. Thanks to the editors and to everybody who's here. I'm very grateful to be joining you tonight. I hate to be a floating head on a screen, but such is life today. I love this thing you just said, how to dream into our roots. So I'm going to read the poem first from the anthology, which is sort of about violating the conventions that poetry tells us. So shout out to Joanna and Poems with Parents. And also the fact that the roots of words bring us back so much to the physical world. So this is a poem called Never Describe the Sky as Azure, which is probably something you've been told in a workshop. Never describe the sky as azure unless it's made of stone. Lujward, migrating from Persia, smuggled from Farsi to Arabic, and thrown like a wingless bird across the sky-dark sea until its version spills from English mouths. Lapis lazuli. O trap of beauty, you are a fiction. Exhausted at day's end of an oven summer, I duck out of the house into the truth of twilight blue. No other name than azure, azure, and no other home the color of this sky struck above this earth. No path to heaven except through this dirt. And one last poem. This is called Letter to the Citizens. The tank is on the tree lawn, the missile in the mail. But don't be afraid. Go on clipping your toenails. The glacier's in the ice box, the river's in the tap. No worries, you fixed the locks and set all the traps. A drone sits in your cell phone. The clouds are underground. It's late, my friend. And late, lie down. Turn the AC up. Don't grind. A snake is in the playpen. A hawk is in the soffit. Can you hear the wings behind your head in bed at night? Your body's sweating icebergs. The waters slowly rise. A knock, knock, knock inside the pipes. Who wants to be let in? A baby in the shape of a bomb, whose head smells sweet as cream, who gazes up, beholds your face from some other world, where pain is yet to find the words and hunger's never erased. Thank you.
What a pleasure to be here this evening to help celebrate the nature of our times. I'm going to start with two poems that are in the anthology. This first one is my own, Mushroom Hunting at the Ski Basin. Driving up the Ski Basin Road, I spot purple asters and know it is time. Near a blood-red, white-flecked amanita, I dig 2 red-capped boletes out of the earth. Green-stained lactarius and yellow-capped cortinarius vanished decades ago. But hunting mushrooms, I deepen through repetition. A dancer repeats steps until she no longer knows any steps. A violinist plays notes until he is living in the marrow of silences. When clouds gather and gather, I cannot predict lightning and rain. I step on dry topsoil, but sense moisture beneath. In this life, if you do not know what you are looking for, how can you find it? A great horned owlet perched on a branch sees into a world at dusk. A bee hovers over a saguaro blossom in noon heat. Foraging among spruce and fir, I wander over an unseen web of mycelium, connecting all roots and branches. A thrumming in my bones marks an underworld beginning to burst into sight. There are so many wonderful poems in this anthology. I wanted to read a second poem from the book, and it's by Derek Sheffield, who is the Poet Laureate of Washington State. This poem is called Ornithology 101. Now that you have staked their skeletons, eyed the scope of a throat, prodded, strutted white ribs, pinched a wishbone for resilience, thumbed a keeled sternum's edge, still trying to steer scattered feathers, stroked a hummingbird's mum iridescence, roughed the white down of a great egret, slit and stuffed as last year's final project, sprinted with a severed wing to catch the physics, given new vision to a blackbird with 2 dabs of cotton. You can leave with an A in class aves. Now that you have looked through birds, you see the diagrammatic movements of geese across the blue sky. Dotted lines narrowing a million years. You expect from every American goldfinch thistles and sadness. And when you walk out among the world's perches and latinate streaks at the edge of sight, the air is feathers measuring the bones of your face. And here are a couple of poems from my book, Into the Hush. Downwind. When the air clears after days of smoke, you yearn to swim in an alpine lake that mirrors clouds and wash the scent of burned pines from your hair. From the west, smoke is traveled 1,000 miles, a point of ignition where a pine snapped a transmission line. When the air clears after days of smoke, you notice the serrated edges along apple leaves. Locate a point of ignition in a word, a jab. A man chalks a cue stick and slamming the white ball into a pyramid of balls. Feels for a millisecond a point of ignition and surge in the clatter. When the air clears after days of smoke, you believe you are simply a casualty downwind. But as you hold a Rubik's Cube of time in your hands, the orange sunrise is nowhere, everywhere. And damn, the pieces are pieces you cannot flip back. And just two more poems. This next one is called Wildfire Season. The wind stokes flames. Red and yellow ridgeline crackles with billowing clouds of smoke. To the far north, a singer stretches walrus bladder and completing a box drum starts to hum. He nods as the song takes shape in his hands. The smallest subatomic particles trace the birth of the cosmos. Traces of scorpion venom will lead to new cures. One day they will extract heavy metals from the moon.
I think I wrote down.
The spider in a sink sips from a droplet of water. Leafcutter ants will one day march across a radioactive forest. In this wind, peach trees unfold white blossoms, shape a song as time detonates inside of time. And the last poem is called Papyrus Pantoum. Coyotes surround a buck, staggering in the snow. Under a rising moon, we step along a ridge of white sand. Sandhill cranes return in low V's and land in a cornfield. In Bolivia, they extract lithium out of altiplano salt flats. Under a rising moon, we step along a ridge of white sand. You burn me, torn off papyrus wrapped around a corpse. In Bolivia, they extract lithium out of altiplano salt flats. A claret cup cactus flowers among sandstone rubble. You burn me, torn off papyrus wrapped around a corpse. Rain makes quicksilver, strikes on the surface of a lake. Way and surge into flame. Rain makes quicksilver strikes on the surface of a lake. Coyotes surround a buck staggering in the snow. In twilight, we sway and surge into flame. Sandhill cranes return in low V's and land in a cornfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, all the readers who read for our first half this evening. And our next lineup will begin with Vina Orden, whose work has appeared in CUNY Forum, Jalapine, Hyperallergic, and other journals. And she is the senior poetry editor at Slanted Magazine. She'll be followed by Kimberly Blaeser, founding director of Indigenous Nations Poets, and the author most recently of the collection Ancient Light. Then Dorsía Smith Silva online will read. She is a professor of English at the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras, and the author of In Inheritance of Drowning, published by Cavan Carey. Then Kinsale Drake will read next as a Diné poet and the author of The Sky Was Once a Dark Blanket, which won the 2023 National Poetry Series Award. I'll read a poem after Kinsale, and then Aileen Cassinetto, one of our co-editors, will read online. She was the poet laureate of San Mateo County, California, and her most recent book is An Immigrant's Guide to Navigating Borders and Bodies of Water. And we'll conclude with Luisa A. Igloria, our other co-editor, who was the 20th poet laureate of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and her most recent collection of poems is Call Bearer, published by Black Lawrence Press. And then Luisa will speak just a little bit more briefly about the anthology and the process of putting it together. So thank you. Please welcome Vina Orden.
I
just wanted to thank the editors again, Luisa, Aileen, and David. Of course, Poets House. I'm glad there was a little bit of a break there because it's kind of unfair to read after Arthur Sze, but here we are. I am truly humbled and honored to be here tonight. So I'm going to read two poems. The first is from the anthology, and this is dedicated to my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who is Lola in this poem. Ghosts. Stateside chocolates shipped in balikbayan boxes from my Lola in New York was the currency I traded in childhood. The economics of love in a diasporic family. Once, she sent me a birthday card stuffed with leaves fallen from the sugar maples behind her cottage on Lake Road. Leaves the size and shape of my hand, which turned to rust in the long, cold nights that followed the harvest moon. A fairy tale back when I knew only of Benguet pines, evergreen and wet and dry seasons. It's been 3 decades since I crossed the ocean like Lola before me, supplicant at the feet of trees raining down copper and gold. I still light a candle and leave out bowls of water and rice on All Souls Day, hoping Lola will grant me a prophecy. But in this yellow afternoon light, the only ghosts I come across are kids costumed in white sheets, occupants of gated townhomes bearing alms, Reese's peanut butter cups, M&Ms, Milky Way bars, status symbols considering a 3-pound bag now costs $30. What would Lola make of this 82-degree Halloween? So far, the warmest day of the driest month in New York City. Of the storms and typhoons battering the Philippines simultaneously. Of the heavy rains blotting crops in West Africa, where 60% of the global cacao supply comes from. I want her to tell me how to read the leaves. Destruction and death aren't endings but beginnings. Memory is how we live for our ancestors. But memory is as fleeting as the turning of the leaves, and soon we may even forget to wake in springtime. The next poem I am going to dedicate to my mother, who is Nanang in this poem. Time machine. To reach Mother on the mainland empire, we flew paper planes to Henry Hudson Hotel, stopover for foreign nurses enlisted at $7 an hour in the war on AIDS. We, the pacified wards of the First World, our relations symbiotic in posterity. Dear Nanang, what did you see waking to morning in America? Insular white walls, windows overlooking huddled masses, winter cracking tropical leather shoes. To enter the G9 ward, you donned 2 pairs of gloves, a mask under a face shield, a yellow jumpsuit, as if patients were no longer men or mothers, humanity leaching as the virus bloomed. Alien, exile, invisible, shared names marooning you on an island off the land of the free. Perhaps it's why you battled hand in glove, though you weren't the white nurse patients demanded. Perhaps they feared your unknown origin, like the plague that twined your fate in purgatory. Still, you could walk between worlds, out west where the Hudson rippled gold at sunset. Before Hudson, it was Mahakanatak, river that runs both ways, from fresh water where human-sized sturgeon spawned before circling back to sea. This estuary, a time machine, migratory passage for millennia, replenished by rain, snowmelt, and the pull of sun and moon. Dear Nanang, what did you dream on that teeming shore? Yesterdays and tomorrows, the Atlantic flowing into the Pacific, arterial pathways home. Thank you.
finally someone my height. Bonjour, everyone. I just want to express my thanks to Poets House and to the editors of this beautiful anthology. There's a lot of overlap in some of our poems. Attention is joy. Because we story ourselves in water. As morning fog lifts and lake glitter stuns, again I will vanish, return sweetened. Jimon sways, bobs on an infinity we call Nabi. All day my paddle hungers. 3 river otters swim, liquid and swift, while I dip and stroke, search the Kawishui for motion or sign. Otter chirp echoes over water, song of Nagig. Magneted, I follow the play of marsh dwellers. Fairy territory of reindeer moss and moccasin flowers, where black bodies sleek the edges of the channel. Whiskered faces pop up there. No, there. Yes, we live between blue sky and purpling water. Between wait and sudden, a tiny trance, a joy. I didn't say that was my poem from the anthology. And then I'm going to read a second poem, first about another overlap. Great Blue Heron. But the second poem I'm going to read comes from the same waterscape as the one that I just read, and it was actually written in response to another of David's projects, Vote the Earth. And it's really about, did this just go out? No, okay. It's really about our relatedness to place, not relationship, but more than that, relatedness. The where in my belly. Scientists say my brain and heart are 73% water. They underestimate me. A small island, Minas, I emerged from Minnesota's northern lakes, the where of Monoman, wild rice in my belly. I am from boats and canoes and kayaks, from tribal ghosts who rise at dawn, dance like wisps of fog on water. My where is White Earth Nation and white pine forests, knees summer stained with blueberries, pink lady slippers open and wild as my feet. I grew up where math was canasta, where we recited times tables while ice fishing at 20 below, spent nights whistling to northern lights. I am from old, medicine barks and teas, from early, the air damp with cedar, the crack of a mick, beaver tails on water. Their echo now a warning to where fish become a percentage of mercury, become a poison statistic, to where copper mines back against 1 million blue acres of sacred. I am from Nabi and Ogeechee-Daqueg, women warriors and water protectors, from seed gatherers and song makers, the wet where pulse in my belly whispers and repeats like the endless chant of waves on ledge rock. Waves on ledge rock, on ledrock, on waves, on water, nubi. Chimingwet.
Hi, I'm Dorsía Smith Silva, and I'm going to be reading 2 poems now. And before I do, I want to thank the editors of this noteworthy anthology. It's just beautiful, beautiful collection. Thank you to Poets House for having us. Thank you to the audience for being here, joining us, and thank you to all the readers. It's just a wonderful evening of beautiful poetry. The first poem I'm going to read is called The Bee, and this is based on my experience after Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. We didn't have water for quite a while, so we had to hand wash our clothes. And I hand washed my brassiere, put it outside on the drying rack, and there was this bee that was very persistent in trying to pollinate my brassiere. And at that moment, I realized after natural disasters, all of us on Earth, we all are suffering. We all are in this climate change, nightmare together. The bee. After Hurricane Maria, you spin in a daze, punch drunk from the fetid fumes of the generator, but you have made a dark tan bra that is widely flapping on the clothesline, eager to gather something sweet and bring it to the surface. And yet there is nothing there but a bare circle of cotton. You wonder how the hurricane galloped away with the flowers, triggering a vanishing act. Well, where is the magician's wand to bring back the canopy of blossoms? It must be in the wind of loss, along with the why and because. There is no way to tell you about the aftermath, slow cruelty. It is a tale that claws cell by cell, leaving wings to litter this earth. And you can find that poem in the anthology. The next poem I'm going to read is called G is for Greenhood. This one was published by Terrain. You can find it online. This is one of my favorite poems because it really reminds me, with everything going on in this world, I feel so centered and connected to nature when I surround myself in a world of green, and I'm very thankful that I have that here in Puerto Rico. G is for greenhood, for spring sitting on my shoulders, then fastening to eye level, chanteuse gladiola spinning, bowing in the distance, sense of green, greening until earth gets it right. Green that I can't keep to myself. Say, green, belongs within reach, like an abstract of the sepal outside of the flower body. You wouldn't recognize me when I cradle green, for fear of it becoming worn in many places. Even when morning lurks upside down, green, not this green, never hurts. Ask the taracos giving off green among drizzled leaves. Ask the grasshoppers that throw themselves against grass because it glistens. Ask wet green in my blood that hasn't forgotten spared green across homeland, where your green overlaps with mine. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. This has been such a lovely evening, and I want to introduce myself. Yat Kinsale Drake nishe nat Orden etrachina nishle bilagana bashish chi ashiheda shiche bilagana dashanelle akut ego atsana nishle. My name is Kinsale Drake, and I'm just so thankful for this anthology. I'm so thankful for so many of the poets who have read tonight. Hi, Kim. I can't see you, but you just read. I'm gonna read first my poem that's in the collection. And I'm actually so grateful I get to read it, because since I submitted this for the anthology, they undammed the river that I was writing about, and salmon appeared 400 miles upstream from those where those dams had been, and salmon were restored. Basically, they made their way. They remembered their journey after a century of being severed, basically, from their ancestral waters. So some good news, some good climate news. And this is the Klamath River in California. And I wrote this because as a teenager, I worked in Southern California, and I was always around California natives. And I try to keep in mind wherever I move and whoever's lands I'm on, to be aware of that and to find ways to honor those lands. And sometimes that's through poetry. And apologies if my video is a little choppy, but hopefully you can hear me all right. Good fire. To take back the land is to poem the deterritorialized we, to poem map we as insurgent, unconquered, ode to what is lost, what must be protected, and always what is shared, to harvest without accumulation again. Zena Al-Sus. Write what you know. I know cicadas swallowed by smoke, horizon choked by car exhaust, bitter rain cloud, butterfly wings halved by the heat and highways, lullaby and grasses straining to hush the uproar from the waterside. I know from Yurok, Karuk, Hupa, Miwok, Chumash relatives, fire licks the carcass clean. Moss and acorns soothe a blaze's hungry belly, wet her all-consuming eye teeth. Welcome slumber when she is satisfied. Beneath the cactus rot, alkaline kaleidoscope, world of new bones, each layer of life giving a heavy clot ready for bloom. I thumb parched bark from the pine in my backyard, shed the years she has thirsted in this drought. Upstate, the Klamath boils away beneath a muddy sun, suffocated by the lake's severed body. Suckerfish skim the surface, their stiff eyes dried on Arroyo bank. All that remains, deboned ecosystem, corpse black wash of trees divvied in 1906 to quench greedy soil, avocado trees, greenery too lush for desertscape. Oh, let her burn softly. Let the lake regain her scattered limbs. There's a sweetness in the scorching, a gentle unshelling. Let those who have known this place reach the clear water and drink. Yeah, thank you. This poem brings me joy now because the youth got to travel downriver to celebrate this like historic undamming, and so they did. They got to reach the water and reclaim these waters and these lands and tend to it and celebrate it. So this last / second poem I will share is from The Sky Was Once a Dark Blanket, which is it was my debut, which came out last year. And I'm Dene, so I traveled a lot of my childhood in the Southwest across landscapes. And of course, the Southwest, to me, is the most beautiful place in the whole world. And canyonlands are they're everything to me. And as a younger girl, I would experience, I think, driving through and, there's so many fossils, there's so many layers in the rocks. Like there's just such a visceral sense of time travel that happens when you go and seeing all of these layers, like time literally existing physically all around you, collapsing in on itself. And Jake Skeets talks about it very beautifully. He's the current Navajo Nation Poet Laureate. But poetry is a kind of time travel, and the land holds all of that time and all that memory and all that energy from all those beings that called that land home and that still call that land home. They're still there. So this is like a little silly, fun poem. theme for the nautical cowboy. My mother wouldn't let me go to the rodeo when I was younger, so I jet off with my girl in her truck to a George Strait song. It's in our cosmology to chase the tails of dogs over the horizon. The sky stretches, map of strange stars. I list the star signs of my exes, none of them from Texas. We cheers our Baja Blasts. Almost all sacred things are blue. Baby blue, baby blue. You joke, you'll never date a white boy. You sing a love song to straight hair and nighttime eyes. The compass needle stays glued to the moon. I catch your eyes in every mirror. There was once a prehistoric ocean all around us. Even whales. We puff out the great swimming shapes of their bodies, this layer of rock trilobites, this layer some ancient eel. How small we are, how funny. Massive fish ghosts vibrate to George Strait. Time is read backwards in the rock body, oldest to the top, magma pushing what's fresh to the surface. Your hand skims the deep blue sandstone, these long, cooled shells. Teardrop, turquoise sliver of horizon, the creeping river invisible in the dark. Here's to you, ancient and alive. The sky stretches, full of old and older ghosts, our once and forever wading pool. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to be here. I'm really so honored, and I'm so excited to keep listening to everyone's poems.
I'm going to read my one poem that's in the anthology, and I was asked to do a talk at the March for Science Education Summit a year after the March for Science. So this was in Chicago in 2018. And I read a Gary Snyder poem called For All, in which he says, I pledge allegiance to the soil of Turtle Island. And my plan after the talk was to ask the scientists in the audience to write their own pledges using what they cared about and what they knew about, and using the language of what they were studying, and to think of it as their pledge. And I collected over 100 of these and brought it back to my hotel room and started scripting a community poem of their voices, not mine. And a day and a half later rehearsed with 4 of the attendees, and we performed it as a group poem at the end of this March for Science Summit. And so this is in the book. It's called Pledge, a community poem compiled from the pledges of scientists at the March for Science Education Summit 2018. A bright light streams through my window. I look up to thank the gift of the sun, whose energy drives our own. Tangled clouds of magnetism blasting from the golden orb. I pledge allegiance to the coastline, the meeting of earth and sea, solid and fluid, to the depths of the oceans and the life that remains undiscovered, curiosities for our wonder. I pledge allegiance to the diatoms, carbon fixers, master architects of glass in our waters, living snowflakes, swirling, sweeping to infinity. I pledge allegiance to the ocean, more original than the origin of species, source of fear and awe, now suffering herself, polluted. I pledge allegiance to the cradle of humanity, to all the members of our family tree who have left us clues about our past. I pledge allegiance to the spaces where we are welcome, and I pledge to challenge the status quo in the spaces where we are not. To trees tall and green, I pledge allegiance. To the call of the loon by the lake, to creeks with their bubbles and gurgles. I pledge allegiance to the starry night sky washed out by bright city lights, one galaxy in brilliance above all. I pledge allegiance to the triple helix, the interstitial glue holding ourselves together. I pledge allegiance to resilience and resistance, to our blind, tenacious spirit ever adapting, to fireflies and their flickering sparks on humid summer evenings, to dragonflies and damselflies, first in flight 300 million years ago, voracious predators, insect lions, enigmatic and powerful. I pledge allegiance to the prairie, root mass vining through native soil, seed head flags waving in summer storms, to the crack of lightning and thunder, so simple, so complex and biochemical. I pledge allegiance to leafcutter bees, carving sharp crescent voids in redbud leaves, to territorial carpenter bees hovering near fence posts, to all the hard-working hymenoptera, tirelessly ferrying life across the ether. I pledge allegiance to soil, home of free-living, nitrogen-fixing bacteria and fungi, to the raw, crumbly matter holding the capacity for life. I pledge allegiance to the Gothic cathedrals of caves, their columns of dripping stalactites, the flapping wings of bats, a choir echoing through ancient corridors. I pledge allegiance to my mountain, always present in my view, a touchstone, grounding me, humbling me with its scale, to the endless details of its mass, the fern frond verdant with orange specks, the shrouded salamander, the fallen, decaying log returning to earth beneath my feet. I pledge to be guardian of my habitat, my sustaining solitude, my retreat, my inspiration. I pledge allegiance to the people in this room and the potential we represent for social change, for justice, for science in service for all. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Poets House. Thank you, everyone, for the gift of your poetry. My first poem traces the daily ecologies that sustain life and community in our California coast. My name is Aileen Cassinetto, by the way. In Half Moon Bay, there are all these halves at the edge of the sea, like half a heart of shore briefly cradling a sea star that has bravely lost its arms. When its stone coral mouth is already drained of seawater, its spine of honeycombed lime would be the last to go. At low tide, the feisty and starry flounder leaves tracks in pursuit of ghost shrimp, while the shy and snowy plover wades in and out of waves, not playing, but foraging for sandhoppers, its fortune tied with the tides like sand and moonshine. But count on the bread to still rise on century-old bricks 6 days a week, like goodwill or good fortune inside a wave. Because of the nature of our times and because we are also nature, I thought it fitting to also share this poem which I wrote in 2019. There are no kings in America. We are not that kind of country. We are sanctuary for the hungry, the homeless, the huddled, held together by an idea our immigrant fathers believed in. Rendered, it meant independence. Pursued, it kindled war, ordnance, a fighting chance. 40,000 musket balls by themselves did not shape the boundaries on which we map our days. To draw our borders, we needed more than fire cakes, more than a pound of meat with bone and gristle, or salt fish and a gill of peas. We needed the faith and grit of people who were not yet Americans. To be an American is to recognize the sacrifice of the widow and the orphan. It is to understand the weft of tent cities expecting caravans and the heft of a child in a camp not meant for children, or sitting before a judge awaiting judgment. What do we say to the native whose lands we now inhabit? What do we say to our immigrant fathers who held certain truths to be self-evident? Do we now still pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor? There are no kings in America. Only gilded men we can topple again and again. Thank you so much.
Good evening, and thank you so much again to Poets House for hosting this program. Magandang gabi, maimbang nga rabi iyo amin. I'm Luisa A. Igloria, one of the co-editors of the anthology The Nature of Our Times, released in September this year by Paloma Press. I'll read my poem, which is from the anthology's last section, titled Now and in the Future, Bright Spots. My poem is Bat's French Kiss with Mouthfuls of Blood. And right after that, I will read a poem by Lebanese-American poet, writer, and therapist Modi Sabeti, titled Water Remembers Where It's Been, which is also in the anthology. Here's my poem. Bat's French Kiss with Mouthfuls of Blood. A pair tiptoe fly across the soft dark, then do a kind of running jump, landing on the cow's nape. What does it feel, or does it feel at all? Or is it mostly unbothered? It only shakes its head a little, tethered as it is to the fence when they begin their blood feast. Saint Augustine wrote, "Inhabit, and you shall be inhabited. Dwell, and you shall be dwelt in." You could call it love, this investment in another, the shared appetite for what sustains life. But the bats are only being true to their nature. If they lick each other's mouths, it's precious currency rather than a kiss. Not ardor, but it's possible to languish from a lack of love, even die of a broken heart. In many accounts, the love-struck sport a pallor akin to being drained of blood. And here is Modi Sabeti's poem, Water Remembers Where It's Been. It takes 1,000 years for water to complete its journey around the globe, which means that the snow in your backyard was once an ocean, and what the first humans touched now streams in rivulets down mountain cheeks, now courses through your bloodstream like a song echoed from long ago, now etches memories of ancestral sorrow in your throat. This stream I wash my feet in is the same water my great, great, great someone carried from a spring a mile away. They walked barefoot against the rocky earth, pressed forward seeking promise, held their troubles like prayers spilled into a flowing river. This river up and vapored into the air like a plea in search of our parched desperation, seeped into the ground like some fresh hope. All we are is a single wet breath, irrigated from one generation to the next, one chorus waving to each other from the invisible ledge between 1,000 years, forever circling back home. Thank you again. And we are so grateful to the poets who are part of this book and to all who continue sending their work to the online gallery of The Nature of Our Times. My co-editors Aileen Cassinetto, David Hassler, and I read over 1,000 poems, selecting 210 for this print anthology, inspired by the creation and mandate of the first comprehensive national nature assessment, which is now being undertaken by scientists under the leadership of Dr. Phil Levin, under the independent United by Nature initiative. This initiative aims to deliver knowledge, weaving perspectives from ecology, economics, health, engineering, business, and culture to build a portrait of nature and of us who live in relationship with it. Working on this anthology with the support of the Wick Poetry Center, Poets for Science, and Paloma Press, we saw how even on the brink of the seemingly irreversible edge of climate midnight, we turn perhaps even more fiercely to each other and to poetry to find refuge, hope, joy, and sustenance. So thank you all for your continuing support.
Thank you, Luisa. Thank you, Aileen. And thank you to all our readers this evening, both online and here. Let's have a round of applause for everyone. Poets House does have copies of the book for sale, and I hope you'll stick around and talk with each other. We also have an exhibit of 13 poems from this anthology designed as beautiful posters. Some are down on this first floor, and then they're along the concrete columns on the second floor. All of those designs and about 15 more, about 27 in total, are on the website, natureofourtimes.poetryforscience.org. And if you want them as a poster for a classroom or for a library, get in touch with us, and we likely could mail you a poster from the website. So we hope to be building an interactive exhibit that promotes the poems in this anthology, that will travel in science centers around the country and be a companion to the promotion of the assessment, which will be coming out in about a year and a half from now. So hope to see you all in Kent, Ohio 1 year from now for a Poets for Science gathering and convening. And thank you again, everyone, for coming tonight.